Hey guys, welcome back to Reserved Investments on YouTube. And I want to take this time to go back to the 6,000 subscriber Q&A, do another segment of questions in that particular series. And hopefully I'm only a few segments away from finalizing that complete Q&A series. So those of you that are reaching out to me, hey Sean, you didn't answer my question yet. Hey Sean, what's going on with the 6,000 subscriber Q&A? We are slowly but surely starting to finish it. So we're going to get right into the questions. Again, I'm trying to keep these segments under 20 minutes. I feel that that's pretty much a good time span for these Q&A segments, especially given the YouTube algorithm. So I don't want to go over 20 minutes in any of these Q&A segments, at least in the 6,000 subscriber Q&A series. So we're going to dive right in. First question, and I believe I touched on this before. I do want to expand on it a little bit. If you haven't already, can you discuss the difference between collecting and hoarding? Where is that line drawn? Okay. Hoarding is a specific mental illness that falls under the OCD range of mental disorders. Now, I want to be very clear. Obviously, I am not a licensed psychologist. I am definitely not a licensed psychiatrist. But what I can tell you is, in the United States, in North America, the Diagnostic Statistical Manual of Mental Diseases and Illnesses governs how we define a lot of these disorders. And it doesn't matter if you tell me, Sean, how do you define borderline personality disorder or bipolar disorder or narcissistic personality disorder or even schizophrenia? They all come defined under the Diagnostic Statistical Manual of Mental Diseases. And we are on the 5th edition. So abbreviated, it is called the DSM-5. If you want to Google DSM-5, it'll tell you all about the history of that manual, how it came to be, and how it governs, at least in the United States, a lot of these mental illnesses. Well, if you open up the DSM-5 and you look up hoarding, it falls under the range of mental illnesses that are pretty much governed by OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder. Now, this is very important because there is a crossover effect with collectors and hoarders. Obviously, as we know, not every collector, not every speculator, not every investor in these markets is a hoarder, but almost every hoarder defines themselves as a collector. Whether they collect antiques, whether they collect collectibles, whether they collect newspapers, trash, candy wrappers, doll parts, whatever low value, high value thing there is to collect, most hoarders do consider themselves to be collectors by nature. So as a result, if you watch the TV show on A&E, Hoarders, or if you watch even American Pickers, or even Storage Wars, you will come across people that have this afflicted illness. Now, I can tell you as a consultant in trade, I do come across this from time to time. And obviously, I am not equipped to diagnose any mental disorder. Obviously, I'm just a consultant. But if you speak to me, either in email or we have a phone conversation and you tell me, I'm putting all my money in comic books or rare antiques or collectible card games, whatever your preferred collecting category is, and it is definitely interfering with your social life, your relationships with significant others, your dating life, your financial life, your business life, your professional life, I'm going to tell you that you need to speak to somebody who is licensed in mental health because you most likely have a problem. Now, one of the big misconceptions out there today is that people who collect higher-end antiques and collectibles cannot possibly be hoarders. That is patently false. There are a lot of people I know, even as a consultant in the trade, who have millions of dollars at their disposal. And some of these guys, some of these gals, they're in their 60s, they're in their 70s, maybe they went through a traumatic event, maybe they lost a child, maybe their marriage fell apart, maybe their parents died unexpectedly, and they have vast resources. And what they do to help get through the pain is they will go to high-end auction places, they will go online on online collecting forums, and they will just bid consistently on antiques and collectibles. They'll get the package shipped to their house, and they won't even open it, or they'll open it briefly, and they'll just throw it in a room. Well, over time, obviously, the house fills up with all of these items that they're buying, either at these high-end auction sites or online. And people will come to them and go, you know, you may have a problem here. You have 4 rooms in your house that are filled with antiques and collectibles. And if you open the door, literally, if you bring in a postage stamp in that room, you got to pull something else out. It's that bad. So it doesn't matter how much money the person has or the items that they collect. If they have an issue where this is affecting their personal relationships, their business, their professional life, their dating life, their finances, they most likely have a problem with hoarding. And it is very sad because you see all types of people that succumb to this at every age level. There's people in their 20s that have a hoarding issue. There's people in their 50s that have a hoarding issue. There's people even in their 70s that have a hoarding issue. Age is not a factor either. Let me give you one prime example. Those of you that watch this channel on a routine basis, you know that one of my favorite contemporary artists of all time is Andy Warhol. I love a lot of his pieces of work. I love his life story. Well, in his later years, Andy Warhol became a shut-in. He was really a recluse. And he owned a very expensive, very beautiful 4-story brownstone house up in New York. And he literally, when he died, that whole house, all 4 stories, was packed to the brim of antiques and collectibles. Well, he spent the last few decades of his life literally attending high-end auctions and just spending money on a lot of these antiques and collectibles. And as a result, when he died, a lot of people did say he was a quote-unquote hoarder, and he had a problem with accumulating a lot of this stuff. That's just one high-end example. So it doesn't matter what type of socioeconomic background you came from or are in. It doesn't matter whether you consider yourself a collector, speculator, investor. You can succumb to being deemed a hoarder if you meet the mental diagnostic definition of being a hoarder. And again, somebody like me, I'm not equipped to diagnose that. Somebody who is, again, licensed in psychotherapy would be the one that would make that decision. So I hope that answers the question. I know a lot of you guys like to watch Hoarders or American Pickers or even Storage Wars. Yes, you do come across some crazy people in those particular television shows that do have a problem with hoarding. Next question. Sean, can you briefly cover the market for traditional slip joint pocket knives? Is there potential for resale with new productions or investment in high quality vintage and or antique pieces? Okay, this market is very niche. It's no different when people come to me and they say, Sean, I collect Swiss Army knives. I've been collecting Swiss Army knives for 50 plus years. I have all these different examples. And one thing that I will tell them, it's fine if you have a passion towards this stuff, but if you're doing it for financial investment, you really need to branch out. You know, one of the hottest markets in the overall antiques trade right now is Militaria. So if you go after like edged weapons or antique weapons that were used in the Civil War or the Revolutionary War or World War I or World War II, you can make a significant amount of money if you invest in the right type of vintage and or antique weapon over the long term. This is a very hot market. I don't see it cooling anytime soon because there's a lot of people that study history and want to collect militaria and items of that nature. Now, there's certain pitfalls that you got to avoid if you're getting involved in that market overall. And I have yet to do a video on militaria. I do apologize, guys. But right now, I have a mass back catalog of videos that I have to get through before I even tackle that particular collecting category. But I will tell you, if you invest properly in that market, you can make sizable returns. Militaria will always be hot. So going back to your question, what I will tell you is, if you really want to invest in traditional slip joint pocket knives, I won't steer you away from that category. I would just tell you to also versify in edged weapons, antique firearms, antique weapons, and the like. So that way, if that market would not pan out as you plan, you would at least have other collectibles in that same sector to fall back on, and that way you're well diversified. It's the same thing what I would tell, if you remember in one of these segments, I answered a question about California gold coins. California gold coins aren't going down in value anytime soon, overall. There's exceptions to every rule. But overall, if you're investing in California gold, that's a very stable and sophisticated collectible market. However, you should be diversifying also into vintage 1933 pre-US gold coins as well, because that'll act as a buffer just in case that California gold market would suffer. It's the same thing with this. You have to hedge your risks. You need to diversify into these markets over the long term. So I hope that helps. Next question, and this is kind of a fun question. I was going to answer this in a bonus Q&A that I'm still going to do on personal questions, but I do at least want to touch on this because I do get asked this question from time to time. Sean, how does it feel to have fans? Have you ever had this sort of attention on you before? I will state, coming to YouTube was a little bit of a different animal than that of what I'm used to. I have always been either behind the scenes or I always wrote for publications where possibly if you weren't exposed to those publications, or even if you were, you wouldn't take the time to read an article that was written by Sean Cermak. Meaning if you're going to pick up a copy of Antiques and Auction News, you might look at my picture, you might read the article, but you may not care or even know who I am. On YouTube, I have found it has become more personal, where people will actually reach out to me through Facebook, or they'll try to find my email address, my personal email address, and reach out to me online. So I will state that I'm not used to having that much exposure. Now, I will tell you, back in 2017, back in 2018, long before this YouTube channel became a thing, I remember I was dining at, I want to say, Seasons 52 in King of Prussia, which is really outside the King of Prussia Mall. And I was there on a date, and I remember somebody literally came up to the table that I was at with the woman that I was dating at that particular time, and they asked for my autograph. And I was stunned. I mean, I never had this happen before. And they literally pulled out an article that I wrote for Antiques and Auction News. And I forget what the article was on. And they said, would you please sign this particular paper? I'm a huge fan of your work. I really like what you do. I wish that you would write for other publications. I wish that you would tell me more about yourself. You seem to be like a very interesting person. And I never really forgot about that, because at that time, it was kind of funny. I was on a date with a chick, and the chick was actually stunned. She didn't know what to think. I mean, here we are at a restaurant, and this guy comes up to me and goes, hey, can I have your autograph? It was almost like, and I hate to say this, it was almost like I planned it to impress her, but I didn't. Another time where somebody did recognize me, of all places, I like to go for long hikes. On the weekends, one of my favorite activities is to go for a hike where I can just clear my mind. I can just be in my own thoughts. And one of the places I go is Grings Mill. If you don't know where Grings Mill is, it's up in Wyomissing, right across from Berks Penn State campus. There is actually this Union Canal walking trail. And literally I go on that trail and I pretty much go for 6 to 8 miles and I just get lost in my own thoughts. Usually I have my headphones on. I'm listening to Enya or 80s music or even 9 Inch Nails. And I'm just really thinking about my life, what I want to do next. Sometimes a lot of the topics on this channel will enter my mind, and that's how I come up with new videos to produce. Well, anyway, I'm walking along this trail, and literally I'm 3 miles into the trail, and somebody stops me. Now, you got to remember, I have my headphones on, so I was really startled. They tap me on my shoulder. I take my headphones off, and they go, hey, you're Sean Cermak. You're the dude that writes for Antiques and Auction News. I just want to shake your hand and tell you that I really like your articles. Thank you for what you do. Thank you for what you bring to the antiques and collectibles trade. So I want to say, besides those 2 incidents before the YouTube channel, I really can't think of too many other incidents where people were seeking me out, other than if they wanted to send me an email, if they wanted to use my consulting services and they knew I was a consultant in the trade. But aside from that, most people weren't tapping me on the shoulder saying, hey, Sean, I really like your videos that you produce. Or, hey, Sean, I got a bone to pick with you. I don't like your views on vintage video games. Or, I don't like your views on this particular collecting category. I never really had that occur until I started a YouTube channel. Now, I'm not recognized as much. Like when I go to King of Prussia Mall, most people are not tapping me on the shoulder going, hey, you're Reserved Investments from that YouTube channel that you run. Most people are not doing that as of yet. I will tell you, as I get more and more subscribers, as I get more, how do I want to say this, more attention through other YouTubers, I can see that starting to change, because there are a lot of people that do recognize YouTubers more than authors, more than writers, more than artists overall. YouTube seems to be in your face, and it seems to be all-inclusive. There's very little privacy for most YouTubers out there. So I will caution you, if you are going to start a YouTube channel and it does take off, meaning you get more than like 5,000 subscribers, there is a chance that people are going to recognize you. There's people that are going to reach out to you via social media, Facebook. They're going to try to find your personal information. They're going to try to call you. They are going to try to contact you. So that is something that, to be fair, I was not used to when I used to just specifically write and do consulting. Most people did not know me, like even in my corporate job. Most people don't even know my involvement in the antiques and collectibles trade. If you work with me in corporate America, I keep it completely segregated from my professional life. And that's something that shocked a lot of people. Like I remember, I'll tell you one more quick story before we go to the next question. I remember when this channel started getting traction in 2020, like halfway through the pandemic, I went to work one day and I logged onto the company network and I had people literally sending me pings through Google Chat telling me, hey, they had no idea. They found this channel that was reserved investments on antiques and collectibles, and they realized that I was the guy that was hosting it. Now, this was really awkward for me because, again, normally I try to keep a very defined line or boundary between who I am in my personal life and that of my professional life. And I can tell you right now it's been very difficult because even now, I don't know if you guys noticed this. I did state this in another video. My company is ending my position and pretty much every other position in the Royersford, Collegeville area that works for that particular company. I'm not going to state the company name in this particular video. Well, my employment ends on December 30th. And it's very interesting right now. I have a lot of people that are reaching out to me going, wow, I had no idea that you were that active in the antiques and collectibles trade. I knew that you were a consultant. You brought it up once, but I had no idea that you've been doing it for so many years. You have this amount of money. And people are like literally shocked that the person that they've been working with for the last 10 years is really living a double life where he's this guy that's operating in the antiques and collectibles trade, and he has access to a lot of this knowledge, a lot of this money, and a lot of these collectibles. So I will say that there are certain experiences that I've had that have been both positive and negative in that regard, and that's where I'm going to end this question. Next question. Dear Sean, thank you for providing your viewers with valuable advice during these collectible market waves. I would like to know your thoughts on the short-term and or long-term perspective for the emerging soccer collectibles market, particularly pre-2000s cards and stickers. I am asking, and I want to make sure that you guys are aware how this reads, I am asking because a lot of YouTubers are promoting the emerging soccer collectibles market as an untapped market with lots of potential. Okay, be very careful in this market, guys. This is a cultural market. What I mean by that is soccer in the United States is obviously not as popular or will ever be as popular as football, baseball, basketball, or even ice hockey. So if you are going to invest in this market, just know the risks. I do know overseas, soccer is a very popular sport. There's a lot of people that really like soccer. In those markets, soccer collectibles, soccer cards, and the like are pretty much a fairly good investment with caution. You still have to buy right. You have to understand the market, and you have to know how the market is going over the short term and over the long term. But I would not recommend, if you live in the United States, devoting a sizable amount of money to investing in soccer collectibles, soccer trading cards, soccer stickers, and the like. I would tell you there are better investments out there in the overall sports card market, sports memorabilia market that you can invest in and put your assets to work for over the short term and over the long term. So I hope that answers your question. Do I think that market will eventually get hotter as time goes on? Potentially. But right now, it is small for a reason, because in the United States, there's not as much interest in soccer as there is in baseball or football or even basketball or even ice hockey. And I don't see that changing over the short term. Maybe over the long term, yeah, soccer may become a thing like 10, 20, 30 years out. But really, the trend is your friend. And right now in the United States, soccer will never be as popular as those other top tier sports. So I hope that answers your question. I do want to answer one more quick question before we end this, and that is, what is your opinion on investing in coins not in price guides? For example, ancient coins, proof like gold, etc. Okay, this is a question that I really don't know how to answer because of the way it's worded. Just because there's not a price guide per se for ancient coins, or even in certain instances, proof like gold coins, you can still research this information. Just go to Heritage Auctions, just go to Stocks and Bowers and look up previous auction info. And you should be able to go back pretty much for years looking at pricing info on these items. So when you guys ask me, Sean, how do you find information on items that are not in price guides? You don't always need price guides in the year 2021 to research a lot of these markets. And this applies to collectibles, antiques, high-end pieces of art, even antiquities. If you know how to search auction sites, guess what, guys? You can pretty much research all of these markets and you don't have to worry about a physical price guide. As a matter of fact, I'm here to tell you, physical price guides are great to have a picture and at-point reference for a lot of these collectibles, but they're pretty much obsolete the minute they're published. Let's be realistic. If the 2021 or 2022 Red Book for Coins comes out, or the 2021, 2022 Overstreet Comic Book Price Guide gets published, by the time that hits market, those prices are already obsolete. The market's moving on without that information. So you should never really rely on a price guide to find pricing information for a lot of these antiques and collectibles. You should do your own research. Hope that helps. That ends this particular segment of this Q&A series. Rest assured, there's going to be another video in this particular series coming soon because we did not get through all of these questions. Thanks for watching and have a great night.